3 years ago, an engineer from Seattle wrote to me. The message was 4 sentences. I did everything by the book. Meditations, declarations, practices. Result? Lost my job, wife left, health declined. Is this transformation? I did not answer him immediately. Not because I did not know the answer, because the honest answer is not the one people want to hear. The honest answer does not fit on an Instagram tile. It does not end with a warm reassurance. It does not produce relief. It produces understanding. And understanding, in this particular case, feels worse before it feels better. But today, I will give it. Because this series has earned it, and because this is the video that the entire space around metaphysics, manifestation, and transformation consistently refuses to make. Yesterday, we activated the second strike, calibrated the blueprint, updated the 30-year specification through the cleanest transmission window of the year. For many people in this audience, the series has delivered exactly what it promised. The March Zero Zone cleared the drive. The Architect's Declaration wrote the blueprint. The Easter Protocol patched a constraint. The financial patterns activated. The second strike deepened the engraving. The trajectory is upward, energy returning, clarity sharpening, architecture compiling, events aligning. The horse is running and the rider has the reins. But there is another group. A group that did the same work, followed the same steps, wrote the same declaration, observed the same protocols, and the trajectory is not upward. It is flat, or it is downward. The energy did not return. The clarity did not sharpen. The financial patterns activated in reverse, outflow, not inflow. The markers from video 3 either did not appear at all or appeared in forms that felt like deterioration rather than construction. The horse is running, but the rider feels dragged. Not mounted. This group does not write in the comments, does not share their declaration, does not post __quote _1 __. They watch in silence. They compare their experience to the testimonials and feel that something is wrong with them, that they failed at the protocol, that they are somehow immune to the architecture everyone else is building, that the fault is internal, a flaw in their operating environment that no declaration can fix. This video is for that group, and for the first group too, because understanding what happens when the trajectory goes down is essential for anyone building architecture that needs to survive more than one season. Here is what transformation actually looks like from the inside. Not the version sold by the content that promises ascent, the engineering version. When old architecture is demolished and new architecture is being constructed, there is a phase between the two where neither exists. The old has been removed, the programs decommissioned, the patterns interrupted, the familiar structures dismantled. The new has been specified, the declaration is written, the blueprint exists, the intention is clear. But the new has not yet compiled into a functioning environment. It is still in the register, still processing, still being translated from specification into operational reality. During this phase, the operator has no working architecture. The old is gone. The new is not yet built. The interface is blank. This is the decompilation phase, and it is not an anomaly. It is a stage. As predictable and as necessary as the Nigredo in alchemy, the winter in the Taoist cycle, the Saturday of silence in the Easter protocol. Every demolition and rebuild process passes through a void. The question is not whether the void occurs. The question is how long it lasts, what it feels like, and what to do inside it. 3 states. Every person who has done serious architectural work in the last 5 weeks is in one of these 3. The states are not good, bad, and neutral. They are 3 different positions on the same construction timeline. None of them is failure. All of them are data. State 1. Nothing happened. The declaration was written. The protocols were followed. The second strike was activated. And from the outside, nothing visible changed. Same job, same relationships, same energy levels, same financial situation. The person did not feel worse, but did not feel better either. The experience is flatness, anticlimax, a sense that quote to. This is cued execution. The specification was received, the build was initiated, but the execution is running at a pace that does not produce visible output yet. The analogy from the March series applies. The foundation is being poured underground. Nothing is visible above the surface. The construction is happening, but it is happening below the line of visibility. Depending on the scale of the declared architecture, queued execution can last anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. A declaration that specifies incremental improvements to an existing architecture, a raise, a health protocol, a relational adjustment, compiles fast and produces visible results quickly. A declaration that specifies a fundamental restructuring, a new career domain, a geographic relocation, a complete financial rebuild takes longer because the foundation work is more extensive. The indicator that this is queued execution and not a failed write. Internal shifts without external evidence. A subtle change in how you think about the declared architecture. A growing conviction that the specification is correct, not enthusiastic, not exciting, but structurally sure. Ideas arriving that relate to the build, even if no action has been taken yet. Dreams that contain architectural imagery, buildings, structures. Landscapes that are under construction. These are the subconscious processing the specification. The build is happening. It is happening in the basement, and basements, by definition, are not visible from the street. What to do in State 1? Nothing different. Continue the maintenance protocol from the equinox. Review the declaration weekly. Track the internal shifts. Do not add more practices, more meditations, more protocols. The specification is in the queue. Adding more specifications does not speed up the queue, it overloads it. One declaration, properly submitted, properly calibrated. The execution runs on its own timeline. Impatience in State 1 is the most common cause of specification corruption. The person, frustrated by the lack of visible output, rewrites the declaration, adds new intentions, changes the commitments, and the build restarts from the foundation every time. State 2. It got worse. This is the state the engineer from Seattle described. The declaration was written, the protocols were followed, and the result was not stasis, it was deterioration. Job lost, relationship ended, health declined, energy dropped, financial situation worsened. Not slowly, not gradually, fast. As if the declaration triggered a demolition sequence and the demolition ran faster than the reconstruction. This is the decompilation phase, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Decompilation is the reverse of compilation. Compilation takes source specifications and translates them into a working environment. Decompilation takes a working environment and breaks it back down into its source components. It is demolition, structured, systematic. Architectural demolition, not random destruction, not chaos. Precise removal of structural elements that are incompatible with the new specification. Here is what happens mechanically. When the architect's declaration specifies an architecture that is significantly different from the existing configuration, the operating environment faces a compatibility problem. The new blueprint cannot be built on the old foundation because the old foundation was shaped for a different structure. The old career supported a different vocational identity. The old relationship pattern supported a different relational architecture. The old financial structure supported a different income model. The new specification requires a different shape, and for the new shape to exist, the old shape must be removed. The removal is what the person experiences as "it got worse." The job loss is the vocational foundation being cleared, not because the person failed at the job, but because the job's structural shape was incompatible with the declared architecture. The relationship ending is the relational foundation being cleared, not because the partner was wrong, but because the relational pattern that sustained the partnership was part of the old architecture. The health decline is the physical foundation recalibrating, the body dismantling physiological patterns that supported the old operating environment and reconfiguring for the new one. This is brutal to experience. The intellectual understanding that ___quote_4__ does not soften the lived reality of losing income, partnership, or health. The emotional experience of decompilation is grief, confusion, and a specific form of betrayal. __quote_5___. The betrayal feeling is accurate in its description and inaccurate in its attribution. The instructions did not produce destruction. The instructions initiated a rebuild. The demolition is the first phase of the rebuild. It is not a separate event. It is the beginning of the one you requested. How long does decompilation last? The duration correlates with two variables: the distance between old architecture and new, and the depth of the old foundation. A person who declared a moderate shift, same career, same city, different approach, decompiles in roughly 21 to 30 days. The disruption is noticeable but contained. A person who declared a fundamental restructuring, new career, new city, new financial model, new relational architecture, can decompile for 60 to 90 days. The disruption is substantial and affects multiple life domains simultaneously. The engineer from Seattle declared a fundamental restructuring. His decompilation lasted approximately 70 days. The indicators that decompilation is in progress, as opposed to random bad events. The losses are structural, not random. They target the specific domains where the old architecture conflicts with the new. If the declaration was vocational, the vocational domain destabilizes while other domains remain stable. If the declaration was relational, relationships restructure while the career holds. When multiple domains destabilize simultaneously, it indicates a declaration that was broad enough to require clearing across the full architectural footprint. The losses follow the blueprint, not in the direction of the new, but in the removal of the old that was in the way. The exit indicators. A moment of unexpected calm after weeks of turbulence. Not relief, calm. As if the noise stopped. The demolition dust settles. The site is clear. Nothing is built yet, but the space is open. Physically, energy stabilizes at a new baseline, lower than the old normal, but consistent, not fluctuating. Cognitively, clarity returns, not the energized clarity of the fire horse acceleration, but a quieter clarity, a seeing without acting. The person knows what the cleared site looks like. They know what will be built there. They do not yet have the energy to start building, but the knowing is present. This is the albedo, the whitening, the purified substrate, ready for the rubido. The engineer from Seattle hit this calm around day 70. His decompilation followed a specific arc that maps onto the broader pattern. Days 1 through 14, the initial shock. The job loss came first, not a firing, but a quote 6 that eliminated his position. His immediate interpretation. Random bad timing. He did not connect it to the declaration. The marriage stress began in the same period, not a dramatic event, but a series of conversations that felt different, as if the relational operating language had shifted and both parties were speaking the old version while the environment demanded the new. His energy dropped, not gradually. Within the first week, his baseline dropped by what he estimated as roughly 40%. He attributed it to the stress of the job loss. Days 15 through 40, the deepening. His wife moved out, not acrimoniously, but with a clarity that shocked them both. She said something that he repeated to me. __quote_7__. This is a precise decompilation statement, though neither of them knew the term. She was describing the experience of an operating environment in which the old relational interface had been removed, but no new one had loaded. They were two people standing in a room with no furniture. The space that used to be structured had been cleared, and neither knew how to navigate the emptiness. His health symptoms began around day 25, persistent fatigue, a skin condition he had never experienced, disrupted sleep that went beyond the zero-zone patterns from March. The body was demolishing physiological patterns that had supported the old architecture. The fatigue was the body's equivalent of a construction site. High activity, no visible output, dust everywhere. Days 40 through 55, the trough. This is the lowest point of decompilation. The demolition is nearly complete, but the clearing is not yet finished. Debris is still being removed. The site is exposed. The person in the trough experiences something specific, the absence of self. Not depression, the absence of the familiar identity that the old architecture supported. The career that defined who he was is gone. The marriage that structured his relational identity is gone. The physical vitality that he associated with his sense of capability is gone. What remains is the specification, the declaration written on paper, and a cleared site that does not yet resemble anything. The trough is where most people abandon the process. The temptation is overwhelming. Rebuild the old architecture. Call the old employer. Call the ex-wife. Resume the old habits. The familiar identity is available, like a saved game that can be reloaded. And in the trough, the new architecture feels theoretical, while the old one feels real. The engineer from Seattle described the trough as the moment I understood that every spiritual teaching I had ever heard was either incomplete or a lie, because none of them told me this would happen. Days 55 through 70, the clearing. The demolition dust settles. The debris removal completes. The site is bare, and the calm arrives, not from outside, but from the architecture itself. The empty site, once the last fragment of the old structure is removed, produces a silence that is distinct from depression, distinct from exhaustion, distinct from resignation. It is architectural silence, the silence of a room that is ready for furniture but has not yet received any. Spacious, clean, waiting. He described it as the strangest peace I have ever felt, surrounded by wreckage, but certain that the wreckage was correct. Within 6 weeks of that calm, he was in a new city, in a role that matched his declaration, earning more than his previous position, and in a relationship that he says operates on a different operating language than his marriage had. The decompilation did not produce permanent loss. It produced temporary clearing for permanent rebuild. The 70 days felt like destruction. The 6 months that followed felt like construction at a speed he had never experienced. The fire horse, because his decompilation 3 years ago also occurred in a year of accelerated cycles, running on a cleared site. State 3. Things got weird. Not worse, not stagnant, weird. Genuinely, specifically, inexplicably weird. Synchronicities that are too precise to dismiss, not the vague, I saw a butterfly kind, but the kind where a stranger uses the exact phrase from your declaration in a conversation you did not initiate. People appearing who should not know each other but somehow connect, and their connection produces an opportunity that directly relates to the declared architecture. Financial events that are neither positive nor negative, but structurally bizarre. Money leaving from a direction you did not expect, arriving from a direction that was not in any plan. Amounts that are oddly specific. Emotional states that shift rapidly. Joy, grief, intensity, emptiness. A sudden hour of tears followed by a sudden hour of clarity. Not in response to events, but in their own rhythm. As if the internal environment is running diagnostic sequences on the emotional register. Dreams that are vivid, architectural, populated by strangers who carry significance that cannot be articulated but feels important. A persistent sense that reality has slightly shifted, not dramatically, not hallucination, but a subtle wrongness to the familiar, as if the lighting changed in a room you know well. The coffee shop you visit every morning looks the same but feels different. The commute is the same, but the perception of it is altered. Time behaves strangely, hours that feel like minutes and minutes that feel like hours, within the same day. This is recompilation. The new architecture is loading. Not executing, loading. The interface is coming online, but the calibration is not yet complete. What the person experiences as weird is the operating environment testing the new configuration before promoting it to production. The synchronicities are the social routing table updating, the new network being tested with trial connections before the permanent routing is established. The bizarre financial events are the financial architecture being stress-tested with small, unusual transactions before the main financial patterns begin executing. The emotional cycling is the emotional register being recalibrated for the new operating parameters. Each emotion getting tested at its new range, producing brief, intense spikes as the calibration overshoots, corrects, overshoots again, and converges. The perceptual shift, the everything looks the same but feels different, is the most reliable indicator of active recompilation. It means the interface through which reality is perceived has been updated, but the content being perceived has not yet caught up. The new operating lens is installed. The old landscape is still there. The mismatch between the new lens and the old landscape is what produces this subtle wrongness. It resolves when the landscape begins adjusting to match the lens, which is the moment when recompilation completes and execution begins. Recompilation is the least comfortable of the three states because it lacks coherence. State 1 is flat but stable. Nothing is happening, but nothing is wrong. State 2 is painful but has a direction. The demolition has a sequence, and the person can feel the progress even through the pain. State 3 has no consistent direction. It oscillates. The person cannot get a read on whether things are improving or deteriorating because the answer changes every 12 hours. One day, everything feels like it is clicking into place. The next day, everything feels like it is falling apart again. This is correct. Recompilation is non-linear by nature. The installation is testing different configurations. Some work, some do not, and the ones that do not get discarded in real time. The weirdness is the sound of the operating environment trying on configurations and discarding the ones that do not fit the specification. Duration of recompilation, typically 14 to 21 days. Shorter than decompilation because the demolition is complete, the site is clear, and construction is assembly rather than removal. Assembly is faster than demolition when the specification is precise. Exit indicator, the oscillation stops. One morning, the person wakes up and the configuration is stable. Not perfect, but stable. The interface is live. The new architecture is operational. The testing period is over. The perceptual shift resolves. Reality looks the same and feels the same again, but the same is now the new normal. And the first thing the person notices after the oscillation stops is speed. The fire horse, which had been running in the background during the loading phase, suddenly has a compiled architecture to accelerate. The acceleration is immediate, noticeable, and after weeks of weirdness, almost disorienting in its clarity. Now, the hardest part of this video: spiritual bypassing. The practice of using metaphysical frameworks as a mechanism for avoiding painful truths rather than confronting them. This is the subject that no channel in this space names directly, because naming it threatens the business model. The business model depends on the audience believing that the framework works, admitting that the framework can be misused, that the same tools designed for transformation can be repurposed as anesthesia, undermines the sales pitch. So it is left unsaid. The guru says, trust the process. The decompilation continues indefinitely. And the person sits in a vacuum that is not a phase, but a permanent residence, furnished with affirmations. If the architect's declaration was not a specification but a fantasy, if the one-sentence architecture described a life that the person does not genuinely intend to build, but uses as emotional comfort, The decompilation phase does not end. It loops. Because the operating environment is not receiving a genuine specification, it is receiving a wish disguised as architecture. The demolition begins because the old architecture was marked for removal, but the reconstruction does not start because the replacement specification is not structurally sound. The site clears and stays clear, indefinitely. The indicators of bypassing are specific. First, the declaration feels inspiring when read aloud, but produces no bodily recognition. It excites the mind and leaves the body neutral. Genuine specifications produce the body relaxation signal described in video 6, a settling, a structural click. Bypassing declarations produce a temporary emotional high that dissipates within minutes. Second, the person has been, quote, 17 for an extended period, months, sometimes years, without any material change in circumstances. They have read the books, attended the workshops, completed the practices. The vocabulary is fluent. The circumstances are unchanged. The framework has become the activity. The activity has replaced the action. Third, the person cannot answer, with specificity, what concrete action the declaration requires this week. They can describe the architecture in beautiful language. They cannot name the next brick. The hardest indicator, the person uses the language of transformation to describe avoidance. Underscore underscore, quote, underscore 18 underscore underscore, can mean genuine patience during a legitimate decompilation, or it can mean underscore underscore, quote, underscore 19 underscore 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 underscore, quote, underscore 20 underscore underscore, can mean the Easter decommission protocol working as designed. Or it can mean, quote, 21, quote, 22. The diagnostic is direct. Read the architect's declaration, the one from March 20th, or the calibrated version from the second strike. Ask one question. If this specification compiled tomorrow, fully, completely, in material reality, would I recognize my life? Not would I be happy. Happiness is not a structural measure. Would I recognize it? Would the built environment match the specification? Would the daily reality correspond to the declared architecture? If yes, the specification is genuine. The decompilation, if present, is a phase. It will end. The build will complete. If the answer is hesitation, vagueness, or I would need to adjust quite a bit, the specification may be a comfort object rather than a blueprint. And the honest next step is not more practices. It is rewriting the specification with the precision that the body can recognize, even if the revised version is smaller, less impressive, and less aspirational than the original. A genuine specification compiles. A fantasy specification loops. A small, honest blueprint that gets built is infinitely more valuable than a grand fantasy that generates an endless decompilation. I did not answer the engineer from Seattle immediately. I answered him 11 weeks later, when his decompilation was ending and the calm had arrived. What I told him was this: the job, the marriage, and the health were not lost. They were decommissioned. They were structural elements of an architecture that his specification had marked for replacement. The demolition was not random. It followed the blueprint he had written, precisely, faithfully, without mercy. The pain was real. The grief was real. The loss was real. But the loss was not a punishment and not a failure. It was a clearing. The operating environment, executing his specification with literal precision, removed the structures that were incompatible with the declared architecture. He asked for a new building. The old one had to come down first. Nobody told him the demolition would feel like his life ending, because nobody talks about the demolition. They only show the finished building. Where is he now? 3 years later. Different city, the one his declaration specified, but he did not think he would actually reach. Different career, the field he wrote into the architecture on a blank page, feeling foolish for even naming it. He now works in it. Not adjacent, in it. Partnership that he describes with a sentence that stays with me. We operate in a language my marriage did not have a vocabulary for. Health rebuilt on a foundation that supports the new architecture, not the overworked, stress-compensated equilibrium of the old life, but an actual baseline of capacity. Income at roughly double the previous level, not from working harder, but from a structural configuration that the old architecture physically could not have supported. The old job was in a domain with a ceiling. The new one is in a domain with a trajectory. He said something recently that I think about often. The worst 70 days of my life were the most expensive construction project I have ever funded. The currency was not money, it was everything I thought I was. And what got built on the cleared site is worth more than everything that was demolished. That is the decompilation phase from the other side. Not romantic, not painless, not something to seek out as a spiritual experience, but real, documented, repeatable, and survivable. The decompilation phase is temporary, it ends. The recompilation loads, the new architecture goes live. And when it does, the execution speed is different. Because the build is on a cleared site, no legacy interference, no old patterns running underneath, no installed programs that were supposed to be decommissioned still consuming resources in the background. Clean architecture at fire horse speed. The people who pass through decompilation and arrive at recompilation consistently describe the same thing. The post-decompilation execution feels effortless. Not because the work is easy, because the friction is gone. The architecture is aligned with the specification. The specification is aligned with the person. And the person, for the first time in years, sometimes for the first time ever, is operating without internal contradiction. But there is something this video cannot do. And I want to be clear about this because clarity is more respectful than comfort. This video cannot tell you that the path ahead is easy. It cannot promise that the decompilation, if you are in it, will be brief. 70 days is an average for a major restructuring. Some are shorter, some are longer. The duration is not under your control. It is a function of how much old architecture needs to be removed, and that was determined by the distance between your old configuration and your new specification. This video cannot guarantee that the specification you wrote will compile into the life you imagined. Specifications interact with material reality, and material reality has variables that no blueprint can fully predict. What the video can tell you is that the mechanism is real. The phases are documented. The exit indicators are observable. And the people who passed through decompilation and arrived at recompilation, every single one of them in every case study available, described the same thing. The cleared site was worth more than the demolished building, without exception. The building was different in every case. The experience of the clearing was different, but the conclusion was the same. The decompilation diagnostic, which of the three states you are in, the specific indicators of each, and the response framework is in the Telegram channel. Not as motivation, as engineering. At the end of April, an event occurs that accelerates everything, including decompilation, including recompilation, including the execution for those in ascent. Uranus enters Gemini for the first time in 84 years. The world's information architecture restructures for the next 7 years. Whether you are in ascent, in decompilation, or in recompilation, the ground underneath all of it is about to shift. The map for that shift is the next video. Whatever you are feeling right now, that is your current position on the construction timeline. It is not a verdict, it is a coordinate.